The paper trail. Let's go, 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 go. Yeah, 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 yeah. For the love of money, niggas come around. For the love of money, some stay around. For the love of money, what a nigga will do. For the love of the money, yeah. I gotta shake it, 12 at night to 5 in the morning, they don't give a fuck now. If it's for the money, niggas gon' bark and they bite like a motherfucking dog. Gotta party like a motherfucking dog. For that cat, I am gon' roof and I'm barking at that cat, and I am gon' take the roof off and I'm riding that ride. Rip niggas to the left, but I'm steady on the only right. I'm swerving with a purpose, A nigga been sipping on that purple. A nigga been cheaping on that purple. Cause I'm getting money, Cause I'm getting money. And I'm laughing all the way to the motherfucking bank. And I'm telling her, tell me later if she thinking what I'm thinking. Damn me getting money. I walk about the bank and I stuck up in the wheel. Headed to my next big destination. Somewhere where I'm gonna be faded. Sipping on a motherfucking Molotov. Feet in the fucking sand. Looking like a motherfucking distant fucking land myself. Wherever I land.
Just another internet conspiracy. This is the kind of theory that makes Reddit go full FBI and TikTok turn into sedition. Because right now, people aren't just talking about John Benet Ramsey. They're saying she might have grown up, changed her name, and become Erica Kirk, the widow of conservative firebrand Charlie Kirk. Yeah, that Erica Kirk. And suddenly, a decades-old cold case, a telling rabbit hole the internet has ever cooked up. Let's break it down slowly, carefully, and yes, deeply. The Netflix doc that reignited everything, November 2024. Netflix a decades-old cold case, a net together into the most unhinged yet strangely compelling rabbit hole the internet has ever cooked up. Let's break it down slowly, carefully, and yes, deeply. The Netflix doc that reignited everything, November 2024. Netflix dropped drops a 3-part documentary on the JonBenet Ramsey case, a crime that shook America in 1996 and has never been solved. But this isn't your standard rehash. New forensic tech, leaked law enforcement notes, and over 100 new tips pouring in after it aired. Suddenly, the public isn't just reminiscing about a tabloid tragedy. They're asking real questions again, especially when they notice something bizarre. JonBenet would be 35 years old right now, and one woman, Erica Kirk, is suddenly everywhere. Powerful speeches, CEO status, grieving widow, conservative darling, and apparently JonBenet's twin. TikTok turns into true crime theater. It started with a post, simple side-by-side. On the left, JonBenet Ramsey, frozen in time, a child beauty queen mid-smile, poised in glitter and stage lights. On the right, Erica Kirk, dressed in a power suit, standing before a roaring crowd at a Turning Point USA event. Same lighting, same angle. But what caught everyone off guard weren't the clothes or context. It was the face, specifically the dimple, that soft curve on the right cheek when they smiled, the same almond-shaped eyes, the same high cheekbone, the exact jawline that looked like it had been traced from the same blueprint. At first, people laughed it off, a fun little internet coincidence, a glitch in the matrix. But then, the algorithm did what it always does and poured gasoline on the theory. TikTok exploded, millions of views within days. Comment sections turned into investigation forums. One user posted, "They even blinked the same. I can't unsee it now." Another, half joking, half terrified, wrote, "I'm not saying it's true, but if it is, this might be the biggest cover-up in American history." The tone shifted. This wasn't just viral. It was cultural combustion. What began as a meme spiraled into something darker. Video breakdowns surfaced, comparing Erica's voice patterns to JonBenet's old interviews. Facial recognition software, real or bootlegged, was being run by users desperate for digital proof. They dissected Erica's mannerisms, her eye movements, even the way she paused between thoughts. Conspiracy theorists linked angles of light and smile symmetry like they were testifying in a courtroom. Suddenly, amateur sleuths were framing side-by-sides like evidence in a murder trial and admissible in court. But this wasn't court. This was the court of public obsession, and the internet doesn't need a conviction to hand down its verdict. All it takes is one uncanny photo, one perfectly timed zoom, one gut feeling, and the wildfire spreads. This wasn't just a curiosity anymore. It was a movement, a growing digital search party digging through decades of dust, believing they might have uncovered a truth that law enforcement, the media, and maybe even an entire country refused to face. Because if Erica Kirk really was JonBenet Ramsey, what else had we missed? Their lives run in parallel. Let's talk about timelines, because this is where the coincidences start looking less like chance and more like choreography. JonBenet Ramsey was born in August 1990 in the picturesque upper-middle-class city of Boulder, Colorado, a place that until one horrific Christmas morning was known more for its hiking trails than headlines. Now contrast that with Erica Kirk, born November 1988 in Ohio, and later raised in the sun-soaked suburbs of Scottsdale, Arizona. A neat little 21-month gap, not insignificant, but not implausible to manipulate if you were trying to alter an identity. A new birth certificate here, a sealed document there. In the world of high-stakes family connections, PR spin, and elite legal teams, it's not just possible, it's disturbingly easy. But age is just the beginning. JonBenet, of course, was the child beauty queen, a 6-year-old who wore more makeup and rhinestones than most adults. Her pageant photos are frozen in America's memory. The big blonde curls, the painted smile, the stage-ready confidence. Now, fast forward a couple decades, and who do we find? Erica Kirk, crowned Miss Arizona USA in 2012, a title that isn't exactly handed out at your local bake sale. It's a pageant circuit award, a polished, rehearsed, disciplined identity, one that takes years, not months, to build, one that would make sense if someone had been groomed for the stage since, say, childhood. And here's where the geography folds in like a perfectly creased map. JonBenet lived in Boulder. Erica was just 30 minutes away at Regis University in Denver. Now, you can say it's a coincidence. Lots of people go to college in Colorado. But when you stack that on top of the eerily mirrored pageant paths, the timing, the facial features, it starts feeling less like happenstance and more like a breadcrumb trail someone never expected the internet to follow. Because this isn't just about birth dates or beauty contests. It's about identity, about whether a carefully curated public image was hiding an origin story far more scandalous than anyone could imagine. And maybe, just maybe, Erica Kirk wasn't so much born into this life as she was recast into it. The pageant photo that lit the fuse, one resurfaced image shows a young JonBenet at a party or pageant, but standing nearby, partially blurred, is a woman that the internet swears looks exactly like Ghislaine Maxwell. You know, Jeffrey Epstein's longtime associate. Coincidence? Maybe. Except that the PR firm the Ramsey family hired to spin the media frenzy in 1996. Years later, that same firm represented Ghislaine Maxwell. We're not even stretching here. That's a documented connection, and then, weeks before his death, Charlie Kirk publicly claimed Epstein was connected to Israeli intelligence. Was he stumbling into something bigger? The police fumbled, and everyone knew it. Let's not pretend this was a clean investigation. No forced entry, no struggle, a ransom note in the house, while her body was literally in the basement. In 1999, a grand jury voted to indict the parents, but the DA refused to move forward and buried it for 14 years. In 2008, DNA cleared the Ramseys, sort of, but the real story is how incompetently the Boulder PD handled the scene. Now in 2024, John Ramsey, John Benate's dad, is begging for advanced DNA testing, hoping modern tech can finally solve this. So what if that DNA doesn't just lead to a killer, but to someone who's still alive? Erica Kirk steps into the spotlight. By 2025, the story takes a hard turn from conspiracy theory to cold reality. America wakes up to headlines that feel ripped straight out of a political thriller. Charlie Kirk, the firebrand conservative commentator and president of Turning Point USA, has been assassinated on a university campus in Utah. The nation reels. His supporters grieve, and his wife, Erica Kirk, steps into the center of it all. Newly anointed leader, all in one. Overnight, Erica isn't just connected to power. She is power, the face of a movement, the CEO of an empire. She takes the mic, she fills the stage, but for someone so public, she remains painfully private. The world suddenly wants to know everything about her, but all they find is silence. Her children's names, never released. Their faces, blurred, cropped, or completely missing from the few family photos that surface online. Their birth certificates, allegedly sealed, tucked away like classified documents at Langley. Even her past address, school transcripts, and early photos are strangely sparse, as if someone scrubbed the internet before it ever had a chance to remember. Now, on the surface, some of this makes sense. Erica has enemies. She's a widow, a mother, in an era where doxing and digital harassment are one click away. Privacy is protection. But the lack of transparency didn't just raise eyebrows, it ignited suspicion. Because when a woman rises to power with a face everyone suddenly swears they've seen before, a face tied to one of the most infamous cold cases in American history, the silence becomes deafening. The secrecy starts to look less like self-preservation and more like concealment. And the question changes. It's no longer, why is Erica private? It becomes, what is Erica hiding? Was she shielding her children from a dangerous world, or from a past the world wasn't supposed to uncover? Was this grief, or was this damage control? For a woman who claimed to have never known Charlie Kirk before they met, who repeatedly painted herself as a simple, traditional Christian wife, the polished image now looked more like a mask, carefully constructed, seamlessly worn, and never once cracked. And Erica's face was suddenly everywhere. The line between fiction and possibility got thinner by the day, because when someone's entire public life feels like a performance, and the backstage is completely off limits, the audience doesn't clap, they start to dig. The Arizona family theory. This is the part where the theory goes full tin foil. Some online claim that John Benate didn't die. She was given to another family, raised under a new name, Erica Lane Frange, Arizona, because that's where Erica was raised and where her connections, religious, political, and corporate, all stem from. The public is obsessed. This theory has clocked millions of views. Even Nancy Grace, queen of cable crime TV, addressed it, not to shut it down, but to explore it. You know it's serious when Nancy Grace doesn't just laugh it off. And sure, skeptics are everywhere. The autopsy proves she died. There was DNA. There was a body. But conspiracists fire back. If they faked everything else, why not that too? Erica faces a new kind of scrutiny. Erica Kirk has remained silent. No statements, no press tours, no tearful Instagram lives. And maybe that's smart. Maybe it's strategy. Because in a world that turns whispers into headlines, saying nothing is sometimes the only power move left. But silence isn't the same as peace. The scrutiny hasn't slowed. If anything, it's sharpened. Her marriage to Charlie, once seen as a wholesome conservative love story, is now being picked apart with forensic curiosity. The timing of her rise, the airtight privacy surrounding her children, the strangely convenient gaps in her backstory, all of it is being re-examined under a lens no one anticipated, not as a public figure, but as a potential missing person. And with the John Benate Ramsey case officially reopened, open, not by tabloids, but by law enforcement using cutting-edge DNA technology, the stakes have taken a sharp, irreversible turn, because now the question isn't just who killed John Bonet, it's what if no one did? What if that test doesn't solve a murder, but instead unravels a lie so large it's lasted decades? What if it doesn't point to a criminal, but to a survivor who's been hiding in plain sight? So now I have to ask, is this the most unhinged conspiracy theory the internet has ever produced? Or is it a code red clue in the greatest American mystery of the 20th century? Did Erica Kirk inherit John Bonet's legacy, or was she always living it? Drop your thoughts below. Seriously, I want to know where you stand on this one. And if you want more deep dives into high-profile cover-ups, unsolved crimes, and internet rabbit holes, you have to check out our next video. You won't believe what we uncovered about hit like, hit subscribe, and remember, just because a theory is wild doesn't mean it's wrong.
So we've got an update on the couple who received the wrong in Florida. We may have allegedly figured out where the switch happened.
Who doesn't know that they are raising their genetic child.
In a new emergency motion, the couple's attorney says the clinic's records show a chaotic labeling system, handwriting patients' names on the tiny straws used to store embryos.
At that time, they're outside of their labeled straws and they are in petri dishes and they are in the lab. It makes the most sense that that is where a switch could have happened.
The fact that there are establishments within the fertility industry who still don't use a barcode system is beyond troubling and archaic. This is not the first time this kind of issue has presented itself. Members of the donor-conceived community, recipient parents, victims of fertility negligence and fertility fraud have been saying that it needs to be a regulation that the barcode system is implemented into all clinics and to all cryobanks. It must be scannable labels like any hospital would have. It's 2026. What do you mean you're still handwriting labels on your gametes and embryos? Now, when I've asked around as to get an answer as to why we have not officially, everyone has switched to a barcode system, the best answer I've got is, well, the barcode system is too expensive to implement. I don't care. Suck it up, Susan. You charge $20,000 for IVF and you can't tell me you can't afford a scannable label? You're charging over $2,000 for a vial of Swimmers? I live in New York City. I can go get some Swimmers from my local bodega plus a bag of chips. If y'all are going to charge that much for a premium service, I better get just that, a premium service. You are literally making people's children. There is no room for error. You're not making them a returnable item. You should be doing everything in your power to ensure that there are no mistakes, because there can't be.
Those mistakes don't happen anymore. That's a waste of money.
Stop lying to people. We can see you. So do you know who inspired It was the fertility industry. Founded in eugenics, and it still practices it to this day. Let's talk about it. Because what's up? My name is Laura, and I am your donor-conceived person of TikTok. So just a little catch up in case you are new here. In the files, I found Jeffrey Epstein's contract with California Cryobank from 2016 about storing his gametes at their facility. By 2016, he is a known SA offender. There are tons of emails of him talking about human cloning, designer babies, and genetic editing. And it seemed like everyone was coming to him to talk to him very intimately about their egg freezing process. And this article by Telegraph confirms that he did want to seed the world. He wanted to impregnate at least 20 women with his genetics and create a superior race. He was specifically inspired by the repository of germinal choice, or as we in the community like to call it, the Nobel Prize Bank. The goal of this cryobank was eugenics, to improve the human race by only selling donors who were Nobel laureates. And they only accepted women as recipients who were in good health, married, and who were not part of the LGBTQIA community. And people who worked with them not only were eugenicists, they were also schmacist. And I know many of you must be thinking, wow, that cryobank opened in the 40s or 50s. No, I was alive for it. I'm 37. I was born in 1988. This cryobank was open from 1980 to 1999. So this cryobank was around for all millennials and the beginnings of Gen Z. But Laura, that's just that one cryobank and it closed. You can't paint the entire fertility industry that way. Watch me. There are no safeguards. There are no regulations to protect donors from discrimination, nor recipient parents. all cryobanks get to choose who and who isn't allowed to procreate, and they do that by selecting their donors. And it's just a couple people in the back room deciding who they want to let procreate. In 2022, the Wall Street Journal found that only 2% of banks turn away swimmer donors who are under 5'10", who have red hair, who don't have a college degree. This is from Seattle Swimmer Bank. It's kind of their cookie cutter donor profile that they fill out for every single donor. And in 2022, look how they categorize race. Caucasian, black/black, Asian/yellow, other/red. They were doing this in 2022. Here's a donor profile from 2022 from the Midwest Cryobank. And they racially profiled the entire donor's family using this slur to describe someone who is biracial, of African descent. They used that slur on a medical document in 2022. This industry not only practices eugenics, it also encourages it. And this is why members of the donor-conceived community have been calling to an overhaul on how the fertility industry works to remove the eugenics aspects of the fertility industry, because we knew people like him would take advantage of it.
New technology helped exonerate the Ramsey family. Touch DNA analysis found the DNA of an unidentified male on JonBenét's long john.
Is straight up exploding right now. After Charlie Kirk's tragic passing back in September, people started digging deep into his widow, Erica Kirk's past. And what they've found on TikTok is blowing up like wildfire. Millions of views, thousands of wild comments, and a conspiracy theory so shocking that even Nancy Grace had to jump in on it. So here's the madness. Folks online are claiming that Erica Kirk might actually be JonBenét Ramsey, the 6-year-old pageant queen from 1996 who became one of the most talked about names in true crime history. Yeah, you heard that right. Internet detectives are convinced there's something way deeper going on here. And things got even messier when Netflix dropped a huge documentary about the JonBenét Ramsey case in November 2024. It's packed with new evidence, wild interviews, and strange connections that have people completely rethinking what really happened on that haunting Christmas night in 1996. Now, here's where it gets spooky. The timing of that Netflix release and the sudden spotlight on Erica Kirk have fans connecting dots that are seriously hard to ignore.
In ruling people out,
I do experience attacks. Every day, I have dozens of attacks coming from this, which is not a shame in itself. But I am married, and I love my wife. So honestly, it's not pleasant for my wife and myself. But that's what they want to push, and they interfere.
Why do they want to push that rule? The French society doesn't care about these things that much. Why would they want to do that?
I think because they want to push a message that I'm a liar. I have a double life.
A few moments later.
I want to ask you, former President Trump, there was an FBI raid on his Mar-a-Lago estate. I'm sure you've read about it. Reports are that some of the material, some of the classified material that the FBI found was about you. I'm wondering if anybody has briefed you on this and if you have any idea what that information is.
I have no information about that. I will not say it's extremely pleasant to see this type of information. I try to be less paranoid each day, so I'm cool. I'm here.
Hello everyone, if you're a new viewer, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. If this is your second, third, fourth time watching one of my videos and you're not yet subscribed, we already go together. Okay, make it official and hit that subscribe button. Today we have to talk about a little French man named Emmanuel Macron. Like many of you, I watched the Candace series, Becoming Brigitte, and I bought Xavier Poussard's book, and I too am fascinated by this saga. I did my own digging into Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte, and I came across some very interesting facts and theories that were not explained in Candace Owens' series, so I want to cover those for you guys in this video. This video focuses on Emmanuel Macron. My other video focuses on his wife, Brigitte Macron, so make sure to check that one out. It's a really good one, and I may do a third video where I focus on all of the PDF files that are in the sphere of the Macrons, but I will only do that video if there is a high demand for it. So if you want me to do that video, comment down below third video, and if enough of you are interested, then I will do that video. Now, this story of people questioning the true identity of Emmanuel Macron's wife is new to many people in the English-speaking world, but it has been circulating in France for many years now, and I'm kind of hurt that I never heard about this story before, but better late than never. And you know what? It's never going to happen to me again. You know why? Because I have been using longtime supporter of the channel, Ground News. Ground News is a platform that I trust, and you can check them out by scanning the QR code or by heading to ground.news/NCS for 40% off. Ground News is a website and app that gathers news from all around the world and all sides of the political spectrum in one place, which allows you to compare coverage and verify your information. For example, check out this story. EU leaders commit to working together after Trump signals that Europe must defend itself. Ground News provides 276 headlines about this story, with 40% of them left-leaning, 33%. We can see the difference in the reporting. For example, this headline from a left-leaning source: EU leaders commit to working together after Trump signals that Europe must defend itself. Or this right-leaning source: the EU wants to use war as an excuse for more debt. The left-leaning source uses language that paints a picture of the EU coming together at a time of urgency, whereas the right-leaning source is undermining the EU's true intentions. Every day, millions of events happen all around the world, and it's hard to keep up. So I use my Vantage subscription to create a custom news feed to see the topics that interest me. I simply go to my interests and select the topics that I want to appear in my feed. For example, entertainment, Canadian politics, US politics, international news, Emmanuel Macron. If there is a specific country, company, or public figure that you are interested in, you can add it to those interest lists, and all news related to that topic will appear in your feed. I've been working with Ground News for over a year now because I sincerely value their platform. They're not looking to persuade people's opinions. They present you with the information so that you can make your own decision, and I highly recommend that you check them out. I'm giving my viewers 40% off this unlimited access plan, which you can access by scanning the QR code or by going to ground.news/NCS. Subscribing not only supports my work, you're also supporting an independent platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. A special thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. As I mentioned in the intro, this video is about Emmanuel Macron, and on a side note, as a Canadian, I never really paid all that much attention to French politics in the past, except when we would all joke about Emmanuel Macron and Justin Trudeau secretly being gay, because they always seem to just be too happy to see each other whenever they meet. And you know, Justin Trudeau is a little sweet, and no disrespect to Emmanuel Macron, but Emmanuel Macron has gay face. You know, stop. You know what I'm talking about. Don't get in the comment section and be all overly sensitive. You know it's true. He has gay face, okay? And this is not something that I'm making up. It's a thing. These two gay men have a YouTube channel called ASAP Science, and even they made a video about it.
Do you ever look at someone's face like mine and think, gay? Obviously, having a gaydar is a thing that people talk about, but can you tell just from looking at somebody's face? So in 2015, researchers started using morphometric software, which is basically a quantitative analysis of form or physical features, you know, like actually measuring distances and angles and then using math. And they found that gay men had shorter noses and larger foreheads compared to their straight counterparts.
See? Gay face. Emmanuel Macron has gay face. Trust the science, guys. Trust the science. Like, even one of Emmanuel Macron's old schoolmates named Jean-Baptiste de Froment said that Emmanuel Macron didn't give the impression of being interested in girls. So the possibility that he's in the closet is not all that surprising. However, this plot twist that he's already secretly married to a man, madness. His whole story is crazy, but let's just start from the beginning. Emmanuel Macron was born December 21st, 1977 in Amiens, France, and his parents have the exact types of professions you would expect to see when a Manchurian candidate is bred from birth. His father, Jean-Michel Macron, was a neuropsychiatrist, and his mother, Françoise Nogue, was a pediatrician. However, she then went on to become a medical advisor for the Social Security Office, a job where an important part of her duties was to give administrative support for gender transition. And many of her clients have praised her for her work. In her job, she granted subsidies for transition procedures and assisted with legally changing people's sex. That's a very interesting and convenient career path, especially considering that her son is allegedly married to a trans person. In addition to Emmanuel, they had two other children, Laurent Macron and Estelle Macron, who are both doctors. So as you can see, I showed a picture of Laurent Macron, Emmanuel's brother, but I couldn't find a picture of Estelle Macron. So we're just going to have to imagine what she looked like, which is probably something like this. Something that is very strange is that there are no known photos publicly available of Emmanuel Macron with his parents as a child, or even with his siblings as a child. Emmanuel grew up in the age of Polaroid photos, Kodak Kodak moments and camcorders, especially camcorders, which were very popular back then, especially in middle class and upper class families. Like you took videos at Christmas, birthdays, Easter, New Year's, like you just for fun. Like people took videos. They've not produced any videos or any photos of them together as a family when they were young, which is very weird. In 2016, his parents were asked about the lack of documentation regarding Emmanuel Macron's childhood, and their answer was that Emmanuel Macron was a replacement child conceived after the stillbirth of his sister. In summary, that was their response to that question. Now, I need to address the conspiracy before we move on. His parents haven't produced any pictures together with Emmanuel from his childhood. Now, we do see pictures of them together when he is a teenager, but not from his childhood. There's two possible explanations for this. The first being a theory that is floating around the internet that they are not actually his biological parents, or at least one of them isn't. Let me explain. Emmanuel Macron is currently married to Brigitte Macron, maiden name Brigitte Trogneau. However, the theory is that this person that he's married to is actually Jean-Michel Trogneau, not Brigitte. And Jean-Michel is a man who stole his sister's identity in the 80s and has been living under her name ever since. So, if we are assuming that this person is actually Jean-Michel Trogneau, well, that raises questions because Jean-Michel Trogneau is on record for having fathered 2 children with a woman named Veronique Drew. The children are Valérie Trogneau and Jean-Jacques Trogneau. Here is a photo of Jean-Jacques Trogneau. This man shares a very obvious resemblance to Emmanuel Macron, and so people are floating the idea that Emmanuel Macron and Jean-Jacques are actually brothers, well, half-brothers. Remember when I mentioned earlier that Emmanuel Macron's mother worked at the Social Security office as a medical advisor dealing with the administrative side of helping transgender people transition? The theory is that Jean-Michel Trogneau had an interest in transitioning, and so he goes to the Social Security office, he meets Francois Nogue, they really like each other, they have an affair, and a child comes out of that relationship, and that child is Emmanuel Macron. And 3 years later, Jean-Michel went on to marry Veronique and father 2 children with her. And the reason people are floating this theory is because Emmanuel Macron does resemble his brother, which he shares with Francois Nogue, plus he resembles Jean-Jacques. So the theory is that all 3 of these men are related. So in that scenario, it would mean that Emmanuel Macron is married to his father. C'est dégueulasse. So Candace alluded to this in her series, and after reading Xavier Poussard's book and doing my own research, I gotta be honest, I don't believe it's true. I know. Look, it's salacious, it's drama, it's fun to speculate, and I love a good conspiracy theory, but I gotta be honest, I just don't think it's true. And I'll tell you why. In my Brigitte video, I go over this in more detail, so please check that video out. But to put it briefly, Emmanuel Macron was born in December of 1977, which would mean that Jean-Michel, aka Brigitte, would have to have met Francois Nogue at the Social Security office at least 9 months before that. In France, legally changing your sex was not possible in 1977. It did not become legal until 1992. So taking that into consideration, it is not possible that is how they met. It doesn't mean they didn't meet at the beach or in a bar or at the grocery store or something like that. But there's just no evidence of that. People have also floated the theory that Emmanuel Macron is secretly a Rothschild living under a fake identity because he does share a strong resemblance to the family. And they have been very influential in his career, pretty much his entire adult life. And Brigitte is very, very friendly with David de Rothschild. So people believe that he is a plant put in place by the Rothschilds to rule over France. People have speculated that Macron's real mother is Nellie Rothschild because he resembles her. While I agree that the Rothschilds' influence over Macron is undeniable, I don't believe he is a blood relative, but I do believe he is their puppet. And they have leverage over him because they know his wife's true identity. That is my theory. I think the real reason Emmanuel Macron's parents don't have pictures of them together when he was a child is because he spent his childhood with his grandparents. Emmanuel has stated that growing up, he was closest with his grandmother, Germaine, who he nicknamed Manette. According to witnesses who knew his grandmother, once she retired, she became a recluse and she seldom went outside. She would close the drapes and spend all of her time reading. And in her love for books, she would recommend books to Macron, authors such as André Gide and Michel Tournier, authors whose writing centered around pedophile content. Who designed this woman? So Emmanuel Macron attended elementary school in Henryville where his aunt was a teacher, and then he went on to high school at La Providence where he met his wife Brigitte. When Emmanuel Macron was 14 years old, he met 39-year-old Brigitte, who at the time was Brigitte Ozier, and she was married to Andre Ozier and had 3 children. In my Brigitte video, I explained my theory on the true identity of Brigitte, so check that video out. The public was first told that Brigitte was Emmanuel Macron's French teacher and that they would meet in evening classes. And the media put out this quote from a former classmate. She was captivated by his writing skills. He wrote poems all the time and she read them in front of everyone. Well, wouldn't you like to know? It has since been established that she was the second version of a program, and that was where she met Emmanuel Macron. And here is a video of Emmanuel Macron in a school play back in 1993. Brigitte has refused to reveal when the two first became intimate. Quote, "Nobody will ever know at what moment our story became a love story. That belongs to us. That is our secret." Or maybe she doesn't want to say because she doesn't want to get arrested. Brigitte Macron's French Wikipedia page acknowledges that their relationship is criminal under Article 227-227 of the Penal Code. But of course, she's never been prosecuted for this crime. However, there is still time. According to French law, a child who is a victim of statutory has until they are 48 years old to file charges. And in December of this year, December of 2025, Emmanuel Macron will turn 48. So there's still time. There's still time. Like, I don't know. It just really bothers me how the media always tries to downplay the criminality of the origins of their relationship.
Now, Brigitte Macron was his teacher at a school. She was 40, he was 15. And they struck up a romance. I'm tempted to say only in France, but certainly in France that is legal.
It was very much illegal. It was reported in a French publication called Le Monde that when his parents became aware of this relationship during the 11th grade, they sent his ass all the way to Paris, 2 hours away from where he had met Brigitte Macron. That is how the story was told initially. However, his parents would later go on to say that it was always in the plan to send his ass to Paris, 2 hours away from where he first met Brigitte. Emmanuel's grandmother found him an apartment in Paris, and Brigitte says the relationship became even more passionate during this time when Emmanuel was 17 years old. She says that he declared to her that he was going to marry her one day. Emmanuel went on to graduate from high school and then complete a master's degree in public affairs at Sciences Po, which is a prestigious university in France. It was at Sciences Po where he would go on to make connections with many wealthy and powerful people, many of whom have been tied to PDF activities and actually now work in his administration. Macron had the ambition of attending ENA, which is a prestigious French national school designed to train senior civil servants for the French government. Many of the students who study there go on to be high-level politicians in France. And to gain admission to the school, the applicant needs to pass an entrance exam. Joseph Zime, a man who would go on to become the communications director under President Macron, was a classmate of Macron, and he was present during Emmanuel Macron's entrance exam into ENA. According to Joseph, in 2002, during the entrance exam, the professor asked Emmanuel a question about the Turkish influence in Central Asia. Macron responded by saying, quote, "I'm sorry, I'm not quite see the point. Did you have another question?" So he didn't answer the question, and Emmanuel still managed to gain entrance to ENA. And at ENA, he was given preferential treatment. Former classmates say he was dumb as a doorknob, but he was still given academic achievement awards and was listed as at the top of the ranks of his class, despite being a moron, according to his classmates. This decision infuriated his classmates that he was put at the top rankings, and so the rankings list was canceled. After graduating from ENA, he was recruited to work at Rothschild & Co., where he was the youngest managing partner in the history of the bank, and he gained a reputation for being incompetent. In 2006, Brigitte Macron filed for divorce from Andre Ozier, and in 2007, Brigitte and Emmanuel got married. Brigitte wore an unusual wedding dress. It was very short, and their cake topper looked like Baphomet horns. In the years following his wedding, despite Emmanuel's supposed incompetence, in 2012, David de Rothschild used his power and influence to get Emmanuel Macron a position as the Deputy Secretary General under the French president at the time, Francois Hollande. At this time in 2012, the press began to speak about Emmanuel and Brigitte's relationship. The goal was to get people familiar with Emmanuel Macron. David de Rothschild felt Emmanuel needed an even more high-powered position, and so in 2014, he had Francois Hollande appoint Emmanuel as the Minister of Economy and Finance. In 2016, Emmanuel announces his run for president, and this is when the myth and the legend of Emmanuel Macron starts to take shape. During Emmanuel Macron's presidential run back in 2016, there were rumors that Emmanuel Macron was gay and that his wife was his cover. However, at the time, Emmanuel Macron was happy to deny rumors of being gay, mostly because it drew attention away from his suspicious relationship with Brigitte. But in 2019, an adult film star posted posted several videos to YouTube claiming that he was hired to be a performer at a private party for the elites. And during this party, he claims that he breached Emmanuel Macron. Now, what is interesting about this is that that particular guy had made several videos saying that he was intimate with Emmanuel Macron. The video went viral. A lot of people saw it, and they never sued. Meanwhile, the journalist who accused Brigitte Macron of being a man, she went after them and sued for breach of privacy.
That's suspicious.
That is all I have for this video. If you liked this video, please don't forget to hit the like button. If you are not yet subscribed, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. A special thanks to all of you who are supporting me on Patreon. Another way you can support my channel is to check out the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. If you like this video and you'd like to see the Brigitte video or another one like it, I will have 2 more videos for you in the end cards. I will see you guys next time. Take care. Bye.
There are a few issues here that we need to look into. In the age of the internet, mysteries never die. They evolve, they resurface. They attach themselves to new faces, new names, new lives. And for nearly 3 decades, the name JonBenet Ramsey has refused to fade into history. Tonight, I'm examining one of the strangest modern claims connected to her case, and that is the theory that JonBenet Ramsey didn't die in 1996, that she survived, and that today she is a woman named Erica Kirk. Now, before we go any further, let's ground ourselves in the facts. On December 26, 1996, a 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey was found dead in the basement of her family's Colorado home. Her death was ruled a homicide. Despite decades of investigation, media scrutiny, grand jury proceedings, and modern DNA testing, no one has ever been convicted. So the case remains officially unsolved. And in the absence of answers, speculation has filled the silence. The online sleuths have attempted to fill that silence. The Erica Kirk theory began circulating heavily on social media platforms several years ago. Users began comparing photographs, side-by-side images, facial features highlighted, eyes circled, smiles aligned. They claimed that Erica Kirk, an adult woman living her life privately, bears a striking resemblance to what JonBenet may have looked like grown up. And from there, the theory expanded. Some suggested the death had been staged. Others claimed the body was misidentified. A few went further, arguing that powerful forces orchestrated an elaborate cover-up. But here's where we need to slow down, because resemblance is not evidence, and viral speculation is not proof. Let's look at what would have to be true for this theory to hold. First, the autopsy report from 1996 would have to be fraudulent. Medical professionals would have had to fabricate findings. Law enforcement would have had to falsify reports. And the coroner's office would have had to participate in a coordinated deception. Second, the funeral, the burial, the public records, and decades of legal documentation would all need to be part of that same fabrication. And thirdly, JonBenet herself, at 6 years old, would have had to be hidden, relocated, raised under a new identity, and kept silent for nearly 30 years. And with no credible whistleblower, no leaked documents, no verified evidence, in one of the most scrutinized child homicide cases in modern American history, this is an extraordinary claim. And extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. To date, none has been produced. Erica Kirk herself has publicly denied being JonBenet Ramsey. She has addressed the rumors directly. She has stated clearly that she is not the missing child from Boulder, Colorado. Her birth date is not the same as JonBenet's, or her birth year, ruling out the twin theory as well. Despite this, though, the theory continues to circulate. Why? Because unresolved cases create psychological discomfort. We as humans crave closure. We want redemption arcs. We want hidden survivors. We want to believe that the child whose face was plastered across magazine covers somehow escaped the tragedy we were told occurred. And why? Because it feels better. It feels less final. But feelings are not facts. There is also something deeply troubling about these kinds of viral accusations. Erica Kirk is a private individual. She did not ask to be pulled into one of the most infamous criminal cases in American history. Yet her photographs have been dissected, her life scrutinised, her identity questioned, all based on facial similarities and internet momentum. True crime content exists in a complicated space. We analyse cases, we examine evidence, we question inconsistencies. But there is a line between inquiry and invention, between skepticism and harm. As of today, there is no credible evidence supporting the claim that JonBenet Ramsey is alive. There is no official investigation into Erica Kirk as a secret identity. There are no verified documents, DNA reports, or law enforcement statements suggesting survival. So the official position remains unchanged. JonBenet Ramsey died in 1996, and her case remains unsolved. The Erica Kirk theory tells us less about the facts of the Ramsey case and more about internet culture. In a digital world, resemblance becomes conspiracy. Viral posts become research. And repetition becomes perceived truth. But when we strip away the speculation, we are left with the same reality we've had for nearly 3 decades. A child lost her life. A case remains unresolved. And no amount of facial comparison edits can rewrite documented history. The mystery of JonBenet Ramsey endures because there are still unanswered questions. But unanswered questions are not blank canvases. They are merely gaps in evidence. And until credible, verifiable proof emerges, theories like this remain exactly what they are. Internet folklore, not fact. If you appreciate responsible, evidence-focused true crime coverage, consider subscribing. And as always, let me know your thoughts respectfully in the comments. Because in cases like this, the truth matters. And so do the real people involved.
At Interlochen, kids dream music, lakes shimmering in the sun, cabins tucked between the pines. On the surface, it's idyllic, but in the shadows of that same camp, a predator was waiting, Jeffrey Epstein.
I realize what I am. I'm very comfortable in my own skin.
His name is carved into Interlochen's history, not just as a camper in the 60s or a generous donor in the 90s, but as a man who used this very place to find victims. Epstein the camper. Long before the headlines, Epstein himself had been a camper at Interlochen. In the summer of 1967, a teenage scholarship to study soon at what was then called the National Music Camp. According to his brother Mark, Jeffrey exaggerated that story for the rest of his life, sometimes even claiming he'd once been a budding concert pianist. But Interlochen was real. He went there. The camp left its mark on him, and decades later he came back the donor years. Between 1990 and 2003, Epstein gave money to Interlochen, less than $500,000. One gift stood out. In 1994, he and Ghislaine Maxwell donated $200,000 to build a rustic log cabin on campus. It was called the Jeffrey Epstein Scholarship Lodge. On paper, the cabin was for visiting parents and donors, but the location was unsettling, right next to the junior girls' camp. One Interlochen newsletter at the time even celebrated the gift, writing, "The Jeffrey Epstein Scholarship Lodge is near near junior girls' camp. I mean, for a while it was just another donor building, but when the truth about Epstein's crimes came out years later, the placement of that lodge suddenly looked a lot more sinister. The summer of 1994, Jane's story. That same year, 1994, a 14-year-old girl known only as Jane arrived at Interlochen on a family scholarship. Her father, a classical music conductor, had just died. Her family had gone bankrupt. She was vulnerable. Jane testified years later that one afternoon, while eating ice cream with friends, she saw a tall woman with a Yorkshire Terrier. That woman was Ghislaine Maxwell. Moments later, Epstein joined her. Jane told the court, "I was on a park bench or a picnic bench with my friends from camp, and probably about a minute later, a man came and joined her, and I sat on the bench still eating my ice cream, and the man sat across from me." Epstein introduced himself and Maxwell as big benefactors of the camp. He asked Jane for her mother's phone number. This was the beginning of years of grooming and abuse. Jane testified. When Epstein found out Jane lived in Palm Beach, as he did, he asked for her mother's phone number. It was the beginning of a relationship where Epstein and Maxwell groomed her for sex and repeatedly sexually abused her for at least the next half-decade. Epstein even paid for her camp tuition in 1995 and 1996 when her family couldn't afford it. By then, Jane was traveling on Epstein's private jet, meeting powerful men, including, she said, Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, Epstein's creepy cabin in the woods. The lodge itself, Epstein's gift to Interlochen, became a symbol of his presence. Court records show that Epstein and Maxwell stayed there in August of 1994, right around the time Jane testified that she met them. Interlochen's own records, though, later claimed he only stayed once in August of 2000. A spokesperson insisted, per the funding agreement, he was permitted to use the lodge for up to 2 weeks per year. Interlochen has no record of any other use by him beyond that 1 week in August 2000. So which is it? 94 or 2000? The testimony, the flight logs, and the paper trail don't all agree. One of the lingering mysteries. What's certain is that after Epstein's 2007 conviction for soliciting underage girls, the school quietly renamed the building Green Lake Lodge and removed his name from campus.
After Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of a sex crime with a minor, Interlochen Center for the Arts near Traverse City removed his name from a lodge at the school.
Flight logs and secret visits. Epstein's flight records show that his private jet landed at Cherry Capital Airport, just a short drive from Interlochen, at least 4 times. 1996, 1997, 1998, and 2000. One trip in August of 98 included Maxwell and 2 other passengers for a 5-day stay at Traverse City. Did they visit Interlochen then? The records don't say, but the dates line up perfectly with the camp's end of summer performances, where donors usually showed up. Even Epstein's infamous Little Black Book listed Interlochen as his Michigan home with phone numbers and the lodge's address. Interlochen's response. When Epstein was arrested in 2019, Interlochen rushed to distance itself. Then President Trey Davey admitted Epstein had been a camper in 1967 and a donor until 2003. But he insisted our policies, both presently and during the time in which Mr. Epstein was an active donor, do not permit unsupervised contact between students and donors. Okay. After Jane testified in Maxwell's 2021 trial, Interlochen repeated that line, writing, "There have been no allegations that Jeffrey Epstein abused anyone on our campus. Camper living areas have restricted access and campers are supervised for the duration of their time on campus." Still, critics and alumni weren't convinced. One former student wrote, "Epstein's presence was everywhere. Employees, past and present, cannot agree on how many times he stayed at the lodge bearing his own name. Even the road names have been changed." When donating becomes a disguise. The arts world gave Epstein cover. To the outside world, he was just another wealthy patron helping talented kids. He donated to ballet schools, Juilliard, and the Metropolitan Opera. But Interlochen was different. It wasn't just an institution he supported. It was a place where, by multiple accounts, he first found underage victims. And chillingly, the Interlochen Lodge wasn't his only cabin hideout. Jurors in Maxwell's trial were shown photos of another log cabin Epstein founded in New Mexico, where more abuse allegedly took place. The pattern was clear. He used philanthropy as a disguise. Legacy of silence. Even today, Interlochen alumni wrestle with the truth. Some remember him hosting galas for Interlochen and his Notorious Secrets catalogs mysteriously showing up in dorms or donors hovering around performances. The school insists nothing inappropriate ever happened on campus, But Epstein victims say otherwise. And for many, the mystery isn't whether abuse happened there, but whether the full story will ever come out. So what does this all mean? Why was Epstein so obsessed with returning to the camp that he once attended? Why build a cabin right next to the girls' lodges? Well, I mean, probably know why. Why did flight logs, donor records, and survivor testimony all point back to this quiet school in the woods in Michigan? And most of all, how many kids walk through those pine trees carrying their instruments, never realizing that they were crossing paths with one of the darkest predators of our time? Thank you so much for 30K subs. Yay! I'm so happy to have you all here, especially our friends who have been there since the start. I do see you in the comments and you are so appreciated and we love you so much. If you're a newbie and you found the story chilling, then stick around because there are so many corners of Epstein's world we haven't covered yet. Every time I think I'm done, I find something else. So hit subscribe and let's keep digging into the weirdos and freaks who covertly run our lives. Bye. If you want to understand Ghislaine Maxwell, her rise, her fall, and her uncanny attraction to powerful men with secrets, Maxwell wasn't just a media mogul. He was a war hero, a fraudster, a suspected spy, and a man whose mysterious death still fuels conspiracy theories 3 decades later. This is the story of the man nicknamed the Bouncing Czech, who climbed from a wooden shack in Czechoslovakia to the heights of British power, only to fall, quite literally, from his yacht into infamy. And like all great scandals, it leaves us with one big question. Who exactly was Robert Maxwell? From poverty to power. Robert Maxwell wasn't born Maxwell at all. He was Jan Ludwig Hock, born in 1923 to a poor Jewish family in Czechoslovakia. His early life was marked by tragedy. Most of his family were murdered at Auschwitz. At just 16, he fled Nazi occupation, cut off the sidewalks that marked him as a Hasidic, and escaped to France. From there, he joined the Czechoslovak army in exile, eventually transferring to the British army. He distinguished himself in battle and won the Military Cross in 1945 for storming a German machine gun nest. By then, he had reinvented himself as Ian Robert Maxwell. This was the first of many reinventions. As one biographer put it, Maxwell created his own myths as a kind of smokescreen to hide behind, building an empire and enemies. After the war, Maxwell dove into publishing, securing the rights to distribute scientific papers through his company, Pergamon Press. By the 1960s, he had built it into a powerhouse. But scandal was never far away. A government inquiry in 1971 declared Maxwell, not in our opinion, a person who can be relied on to exercise proper stewardship of a publicly quoted company. Ouch. Still, he called back, and in 1984, he finally achieved his dream, buying the Mirror Group, home of the Daily Mirror. Now he was a tabloid king, and a rival to Rupert Murdoch. The two despised each other. As Murdoch later said bluntly, Maxwell was a crook and a total buffoon. But Maxwell wasn't just about newspapers. He bought helicopter companies, football clubs, language schools, and even the New York Daily News. He dined with world leaders, posed with Princess Diana, chatted to Margaret Thatcher, and rubbed shoulders with US presidents. All the while, people whispered that Maxwell had ties to MI6, the KGB, and Mossad, maybe even all three. Alleged double or triple agent, visionary or spy, who knew? The monster at home. Maxwell's empire wasn't the only place he ruled with an iron fist. At home in Headington Hill Hall, the Oxford mansion he famously called the best council house in the country, he was a terrifying patriarch. Family lunches were nightmares. His children later recalled sitting in fear, waiting for his gaze to land on them. He humiliated them in public. Biographer John Preston described it as the searchlight beam of her father's gaze moving around the table towards her. Bit creepy. Only one child seemed safe, Ghislaine. She was the youngest, born in 1961, and by all accounts, his favorite. She was his constant companion at events, from Elton John's birthday party to football matches. He even named his yacht after her, the Lady Ghislaine. Betty Maxwell, her mother, later recalled, Ghislaine is the baby of the family and the one who was closest to her father. The whole of Ghislaine's world collapsed after his death. Scandals, secrets, and the shadow of Israel. By the 1980s, Maxwell was living large, but cracks were showing. He was drowning in debt, borrowing from dozens of banks. To keep up appearances, he began secretly raiding his company's pension funds, ultimately leaving a £460 million hole. At the same time, he became deeply involved with Israel. He invested heavily in Israeli businesses, donated millions, and was close to political leaders, including Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. Then came darker rumors. Whistleblowers claimed Maxwell helped Mossad sell doctored software called Promise, which contained a hidden backdoor, letting Israel spy on governments worldwide. Was this guy a businessman, a patriot, or a spy trading secrets? Like, what was going on? Maxwell denied all of that, but those suspicions have really never gone away. The fall of Captain Bob. By late 1991, Maxwell was cornered. His companies were collapsing under billions in debt. Banks were circling. A BBC Panorama investigation was digging into his financial irregularities, and his own finance director was demanding answers about the missing pension money. On November 5th, 1991, Maxwell vanished from his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, off of the Canary Islands. Hours later, his naked body was found floating in the Atlantic. The official verdict? Heart attack, accidental drowning. But right off the bat, few people believed it. One former colleague insisted Maxwell had been suicidal. He was a man who could not face the ignominy of jail. So, I am a suicide theorist. Others thought it was a clumsy accident. Photographer Ken Lennox, who saw his body, recalled, "He used to get up at night and pee over the stern of the ship. I think he lost his balance because he was very top-heavy." Then, of course, there's the murder theory. Ghislaine herself claimed he was pushed. Conspiracy theorists pointed fingers at Mossad, suggesting Maxwell tried to extort Israel and paid the price. Adding fuel to the fire, his body was buried in Jerusalem with what was essentially a state funeral. The Prime Minister at the time attended. Mossad's chiefs were there too. For some, that was proof that he had been more than just a businessman. Ashes and ruins. In death, Maxwell left behind chaos. His companies imploded, pensioners lost their savings. His sons Kevin and Ian were arrested for fraud, though later acquitted. Kevin became Britain's biggest bankrupt. Betty Maxwell, once draped in diamonds and furs, was left with nothing. As she said bitterly, "Those are lies. I haven't anything." And Ghislaine? She was shattered. Just a year later, she was broke, living in a small New York apartment. But like her father, she reinvented herself. Only this time as the glamorous companion of Jeffrey Epstein. Another powerful man with secrets. Another man whose death would spark endless conspiracy theories. Legacy of a shadow. Robert Maxwell was buried on the Mount of Olives overlooking Jerusalem. His widow remembered it as a hero send-off and what amounted to a state funeral. But in Britain, headlines screamed the robber and the crook of the century. He was both hero and villain, visionary and fraudster, war hero and possible spy. And maybe that's the point. Maxwell lived in contradictions. He created myths about himself, told lies so often that no one, maybe not even he, knew where the truth ended. What is certain is that he shaped Ghislaine. He gave her privilege, connections, and an example of power unchecked by morality. And so when we talk about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, we have to remember the man who came before, the man who named his yacht Lady Ghislaine, the man who fell from grace and then from his ship, leaving behind nothing but ashes, secrets, and conspiracy theories that refuse to die. What do you think? Was Robert Maxwell murdered? Did he fall by accident? Did he kill himself? Was he trying to escape the humiliation of stealing all those pension funds? Was he a spy? Was he not a spy? Drop your theories in the comments. Very interested to know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe because next time we've got even more shit. New crazy shit. Important announcement. Important announcement. We're taking a week off. So I won't see you next week, but I will be back a week after. Better than ever, baby. I just need a little nap. Nothing crazy, nothing to worry about. I just need a little nap. But I've got some big stuff lined up for you when I'm back, so do not worry and don't miss me too much. I'll see you soon. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Go to bed early, drink lots of water, and don't get on any planes, like I always say. Even though it seems like nice to be on the private jet, I just don't think it's worth it. Love you. Bye. When it comes to the Epstein name, the world knows Jeffrey, the financer, the convicted sex offender, and the man at the center of one of the most controversial, Mark Epstein, Jeffrey's brother. He's not accused of any crimes. He wasn't charged in connection with Jeffrey's abuse network, but his life is wrapped up in unanswered questions about where his money comes from, why he owned a modeling agency that seemingly never signed a model, and why he spent the last 6 years insisting that his brother was murdered. And maybe most intriguingly, why powerful political names like Donald Trump keep popping up in his interviews. Let's get into it. From Brooklyn artist to mysterious millionaire, Mark Epstein was born in 1954 in Brooklyn, New York, a year after his older brother Jeffrey. They grew up in the private, gated community of Seagate, Coney Island, the sons of Pauline and Seymour Epstein. Mark was Puggy to his neighbors, a kid who would go on to study at Cooper Union and Stony Brook University. Graduating from Cooper in 1976, his early career was as an artist, but by the late 1980s, he had pivoted into business. He ran Ismo, a t-shirt printing company he founded in 1986, and became the president of J. Epstein & Co., his brother Jeffrey's investment company. He was also head of Atelier Enterprises, a leasing and chartering business. But it was in real estate that he made his biggest moves, eventually running Epstein Acquisitions from 1987 to 2015 and serving as an executive at Ossa Properties. That's where things get interesting. The building with secrets. In the 1990s, Mark bought a 16-story condominium at 301 East 66th Street from billionaire Les Wexner. Yes, the same Les Wexner who had a famously close relationship with Epstein, the Victoria's Secret owner whose fingerprints and vibes are all over the place. It wasn't just any Manhattan building. According to records and witness accounts, Jeffrey Epstein long used units there to house girlfriends, associates, employees, and businesses. After Jeffrey's 2019 arrest, some speculated the building could have been a hub for moving young women through his network. Mark has denied any role in his brother's operations. The modeling agency that never modeled. In December 2005, Mark Epstein quietly incorporated a new business, Saint Model and Talent. On paper, it was a New York modeling agency. In reality, no one really can point to a single signed model, fashion shoot, or talent booking that ever actually happened. The timing was curious. The mid-2000s were a period where Jeffrey Epstein's own connections to the modeling world were well documented, and accusations were swirling about how modeling agencies could be used to recruit young women into his network. Also, Les Wexner was there running around, who owns Victoria's Secret, and was friends with Epstein and Trump and everybody. Records show that Saint Model and Talent was registered to Mark's business addresses, but despite its apparent inactivity, it was kept incorporated for years. There's no real public signs it generated any revenue or hired staff or even had like an office for models to visit. Mark has never publicly explained why he set it up or what it actually did. And while there's no public evidence linking the agency to his brother's criminal activity, the optics, combined with his ownership of 301 East 66th Street, have fueled ongoing questions about how intertwined the brothers' worlds really were. Big donations, bigger questions. Despite a history of recurring tax debt, Mark has been a six-figure donor to Cooper Union and served as chair of its governing board until resigning in 2015 after a financial crisis and student protests. He's also been involved in the Humpty Dumpty Institute, an international charity linked to members of Congress, to which he loaned over $100,000 in 2014. The brother's death, most likely murdered. Everything changed in August of 2019 when Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his Manhattan jail cell. Officially, it was ruled a suicide by hanging, but Mark says that's a lie. They both came out of the autopsy room and said they couldn't call it a suicide because it looked too much like a homicide. Now that never appears in any government report. He told Crime Stories with Nancy Grace, referring to two forensic pathologists, Dr. Michael Baden and a city pathologist who examined the body. Mark claims the broken bones in Jeffrey's neck occur in less than 2% of suicides like this. He says New York's chief medical examiner, Dr. Barbara Sampson, ruled it a suicide without even seeing the body. After the autopsy was over that day, we claimed the body, so she never saw it, he said. He's called the Justice Department's official report bullshit and blasted Trump-era FBI director Kash Patel as a fucking moron for saying you know a suicide when you see one. The Trump connection. Mark has repeatedly insisted that Donald Trump and Jeffrey were extremely close in the 1990s and early 2000s. They were extremely close. I saw them together. Many people have seen them together, he told Channel 4's Kathy Newman. You've seen videos of them, parties and all over the place, and photographs. In the early 90s, when he was in financial trouble, and that there are witnesses who could testify to that. When the White House denied it, Mark called the statement just another blatant lie. In July of this year, he went even further in an interview with Newsweek. In the 2016 election, we were talking about the election, and Jeffrey told me that if he said what he knew about the candidates, they would have to cancel the election. That's a quote. That's exactly what he told me. Mark says Jeffrey never told him the specifics, but we know that Jeffrey had dirt on Donald Trump. We know that. That's a fact. Trump has denied any wrongdoing.
For years, I wouldn't talk to Jeffrey Epstein because he did something that was inappropriate.
Blah, 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 blah. Check out my full video on that. Steve Bannon's 15 hours of Epstein footage. In 2021, the New York Post released a trailer for a documentary Steve Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist, was making about Jeffrey Epstein. It never came out. Mark says Bannon told him he filmed 15 or 16 hours of videotape with Jeffrey in 2018 and 2019, and he was, quote, trying to help Jeff rehabilitate his reputation. Mark's demand is simple. Let me see the videotapes. He's my brother. Bannon now says he'll release a 5-part series early next year, but Mark isn't holding his breath. The will that cut him out. 2 days before his death, Jeffrey signed a will moving all $577 million of his assets into a private trust. If he had died without a will, Mark would have inherited everything. Instead, he got nothing. Mark says he's not a trustee, not a beneficiary, and has no idea who controls the trust. But he did offer his Florida condo as collateral for Jeffrey's bail in 2019. Conspiracy theorist or reluctant whistleblower? To a lot of people, Mark is pushing a conspiracy theory. To others, he's asking legitimate questions about a death that occurred under bizarre circumstances. Guards asleep, cameras malfunctioning, cell doors possibly unlocked. Stop covering things up and let a real, honest homicide investigation take place. He told Australian media just last month. Somebody wanted to keep him quiet. Where that leaves the Mark Epstein mystery. Mark Epstein's story is not one of criminal charges or court trials. It's about wealth without a clear origin, business ventures that just raise eyebrows, and a 6-year campaign to cast doubt on the official account of one of the most infamous deaths of the century. He's the man who could have inherited Jeffrey Epstein's entire fortune, but was cut out at the very last moment. The man who owned a building tied to his brother's world. The man whose name sits at the strange crossroads of art, real estate, modeling, politics, and one of the darkest scandals in modern history. And as long as he keeps talking about Trump, secret tapes, about murder, the other Epstein will remain a mystery all his own. Let me know what you think of Mark and his modeling agency and everything like that. I'm very interested to see what people think. Do you think it's just a weird coincidence, or do you feel like he was genuinely connected in this whole thing? Let me know in the comments. If you're locked into this Epstein stuff like I am, make sure you check out some other videos I've done. I did a big deep dive into the entire friendship between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, and like, no spoilers, but like, it's gross. Bye.